Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the podcast episode of today. So this is, hopefully it should be a very good episode because this is the second fucking time I'm recording this thing because the audio was just having an absolute meltdown. I don't know if it was the computer that it was connected to that was glitching or if it was the actual software. I don't know, but the point is that the audio was dropping in and out. Shania tried to do her magic, like mixing camera audio with the mic audio in like post, but we were just like, you know what? I feel like the content of this episode is so good, it needs to be re-recorded so that people aren't focusing on like the weird changes in the audio. So here we are again, and we are talking about how to break out of social media addiction and a fixation to your phone. Now, we are talking about behavioral addictions in this episode. So you could actually apply this to other possible behavioral addictions that you might have. So for example, you might have like a shopping addiction, a porn addiction, a fucking whatever. Like there's so many different behavioral addictions that people have. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So before we get into the topic of today's episode, we are going to be speaking about a study. It's kind of like a brain fact, but it also ties heavily into today's episode. So it's a brain fact that kind of bleeds into today's episode because I'm going to be using a lot of this fact within the episode so you can come up with really, really good tools to snap out of this behavioral addiction or fixation. And what I'm going to talk to you about was a study that was done called, well, it's around kind of the rat park study. And I want you to really think about, as I talk to you about this study, I want you to think about what can rat park teach us about addiction, okay? So basically what this study went on to show, I'm going to explain it in detail in a second, is that addiction is not just about the drug. It's not just about the substance. It's not just about that stimulus, okay? It is also about the individual within their environment. And the environment will influence heavily what kind of role that substance will play, whether it's going to be life-altering, it's going to take over, it's going to be a crazy addiction, or whether it's just going to be something that exists within their life, but it doesn't destroy their life, okay? So this experiment was carried out in the 70s by psychologist Dr. Bruce Alexander, and it showed so much about the interaction between individual and addiction, okay? So the experiment goes as follows. They got a bunch of rats, and the reason why they always use rats is because rats' brains, despite how different rats and humans are, there's a lot of similarities between the rat brain and the human brain, so they like to do a lot of experiments on rats and mice. So they put a bunch of rats in a cage, and this cage, they were isolated, they had no community, and they had no entertainment whatsoever. So they're bored AF. And they gave them the option to drink out of this little bottle that drops out water or a bottle that drops out cocaine or heroin, okay? So these rats obviously discover this cocaine/heroin, depending on the cage that they were in. And they start to drink from the drug bottle, and they drink from the drug bottle again and again and again. They do it obsessively until they all overdosed and died, okay? So these rats were relentless. They didn't choose the water. They kept going back to the drugs. Drug, became fully addicted and died. So the question was, Alexander's question was, is this drug this addictive that they're willing to go drug over water every time? Or is the addiction relative to the environment that the rat is in? So then he thought, I'm going to test it again with a different environment. So then he created something called rat park. Keep that phrase in mind, okay? He created rat park. So here he had this paradise for rats, okay? He had set up slides and colored balls and objects that they could play with and interact with. It's like a theme park. There were all these other rats. The rats could interact, they could play, they could socialize, they could have sex. They had this really meaningful interactions with their rat community. Plus it was really fun, bright colors. They had everything they wanted, okay? There were tunnels, there was everything, okay? Now, alongside this rich environment and alongside this community and entertainment, they put the two bottles. They put the water and they put the bottle that drips out the drugs, okay? When in Rat Park, all the rats preferred the water. They were fully like satisfied with their lives, they had such rich connections, they were entertained, that they preferred the water. And even, I think this is even more interesting, even when the rats did dabble in the drugs, it was just every so often, like a recreational use. Like, yeah, I could take it or leave it. I could have a bit of cocaine, but it's not, I don't have to go back. I'm not dying of boredom. I've got other things that are so meaningful in my life that I could take it or leave it. So they would dabble in the drugs, but it taught even restraint. It taught that for them, this wasn't the be all end all, and I could actually, just not have it. So they never overdosed, and therefore they never died from it. So what we learned from this study is that the less community, the less connection, the less richness that there is in your life, then the more likely the rats are to hit the drugs. And we could kind of apply this to humans as well. The less community, the less connection, the less kind of purpose, the less richness and entertainment, the more likely you are to turn to things that are addictive, that are pacifiers in life, whether it's a chemical addiction or a behavioral addiction, okay? So not in every case with humans, but in many, many cases, lack of connection and community, or lack of feeling loved, lack of feeling accepted as part of a group, is one of the greatest leaders to addiction and dependency, okay? People receiving, now this is another thing that was, I was reading up deep about this Rat Park thing and about addiction. And the interesting thing is people that go to hospital, that receive treatment after something like a hip replacement or some like major surgery where they need to be put on morphine, which is kind of like a derivative of heroin, pretty much, don't, for the most part, like the greater percentage of these people are put on this very high dose of morphine, which is a highly addictive substance normally, but they are put on this dose in the hospital when they're recovering from surgery. When they leave the hospital, there is no addiction to that drug. For most people, they go back to their normal lives, they go back to their families, back to their home, their communities, their jobs, their sense of self and their sense of purpose, and they don't have an addiction. Your grandmother or grandfather that's gone in for that hip, they don't come out with a heroin addiction, okay? And another interesting study that was done, so basically what that is showing is that when you take someone out of the environment but then put them back in their home environment, it does not turn them into an addict. It is more so when someone is not fulfilled, is already having a lot of troubles, is already wanting to escape, and then is exposed to this addictive substance, they are the ones that are most likely to become addicted, for the most part. In general, we're talking. Now, another interesting study was that in the Vietnam War, 20% of the soldiers, this is US soldiers, the study was done on US soldiers, were using heroin. Okay, so this is just to survive, to get by, to get through day to day. It's extremely traumatic experience that these people are going through. It's just like unimaginable. So 20% were using heroin pretty much as a coping mechanism. But when the soldiers returned, 95% of the soldiers that use heroin stopped without any withdrawals, without needing to go to rehab, without any need for some sort of recovery program whatsoever. They just stopped the moment they got home, and being back at home for them was like being in Rat Park. Okay, they had their connections, they were with their family, they had like meaningful relationships within their life, they had their jobs or their entertainment or the city that they lived in and the things that they loved to do. So they would come back and there would be no addiction for 95% of these soldiers. So basically that tells us a lot about the connection between the environment versus just the addictive substance itself. So we know that human connection is declining in general. We know that a lot of people, most of people's issues are around feeling lonely, feeling isolated, feeling like, yeah, there's people in their life, but they don't feel true connection. One of the things that I get asked the most is, how do you build the friendship group that you have? How do I find that? How do I replicate that? Because of the really close connection I have with my girlfriends, which then highlights to me how many people don't have something like that, and how it really is something that people feel is lacking. And there's all these studies that were done around, how people feel towards their, like their life overall and their general life satisfaction. And what if the biggest factors that people would want changed was, having more meaningful connections, or having a stronger friendship group, or having like those people that they are there like ride or die, which they feel they don't have. Okay. So when we see that human connection is declining in general, that community is no longer there, drugs kind of will push people into even more of an isolation. And then an addict becomes more and more isolated. So recovery becomes like this superhuman feat, because recovering from any kind of addiction, let alone a chemical addiction, which is even more intense as far as how it hijacks the brain, is almost impossible. So that's also why when you look at some of the most effective tools for addicts to recover, you could take them to all the rehabs in the world, you could do all the methadone programs in the world, but some of the things that are the most effective to get addicts to recover are these AA or NA programs where you meet your community. You find your people, you find a support network, and that's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you sober. So there's a lot to be said for, obviously, meaningful connections. I think everything ultimately comes down to finding meaning in your connections and in your own life. So this episode is geared towards social media addiction, obviously. But like I said, based on what you just heard about Rat Park, this can actually be applied to other kinds of behavioural addictions as well. Now, let's talk about specifically phone fixation and social media addiction and how to know if it's becoming out of hand. And if you're listening right now, and I'm about to rattle off a whole bunch of clues. If you're listening right now and you're thinking, oh, that kind of sounds like me, but I'm functioning, then you do have a problem. It's okay to admit that you have a problem. And also, you might justify it by saying, but that's everyone in my friendship group. That's my whole fucking family. Just because everyone has this, it doesn't make it not a problem. Just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean that it's the healthiest or it's an okay thing to do, okay? You are literally potentially eroding away many, many good things in your life and justifying it because of where everyone does it. So if everyone's miserable, does that mean that I need to be miserable? Absolutely not, okay? So let's talk about it. How to know if it's becoming out of hand and it's becoming an addiction or fixation. Number one, compulsive and constant accessing. What I mean by compulsive is that you find yourself reaching to your phone where you don't have a logical reason to reach for it. So you've just checked your TikTok, Instagram, you've just touched everything, you've put it down, and you find yourself reaching for your phone again within, and you can't pinpoint exactly why. You've literally just checked it. That's addictive. Number two, it impacts your work and study. If you say, I struggle to focus, I struggle, but then you're always checking your phone, then that's a problem. The phone is one of the reasons, because you could say, but it's my ADHD, it's this and that. It's been proven that phones worsen ADHD symptoms. So even for people that have ADHD, you're making it fucking worse by checking your phone. The phone isn't the ADHD isn't separate to the fact that the phone is also making your focus worse. It also impacts your relationships. So other people in your family notice that you are more absent from engaging in activities, family conversations, or conversations at the table because you spend a lot of time on your phone. You might notice this in your friends when you go out for coffee or whatever. There might be one or two friends that's always on their phone and you almost have to pull them up on it, or people have pulled you up on it. It's different if it's a once-off. Here and there, you're going to be whatever. But to be needing to check your social media when you're at a social gathering with people that you are connected to, that's a big problem. Because then we go home and complain that we don't have connection, but we're not putting in the effort into we had an opportunity to have a real connection, but we were switched off. And then we wonder, but I don't feel connected to these people. Well, I wonder why I can't, because you weren't fucking connecting, were you? Another issue is there's this lonely boomer issue. And it's more common with men than women, but women do it as well, where almost boomers who are kind of retired or semi-retired, they've got all this free time, but they're the ones that maybe don't have a lot of social connections, aren't doing a lot with their time, aren't putting themselves out there into hobbies, activities, whatever, that they get sucked into this social media fixation. I've had many people write into me being people in my family, my uncles, my dads, my mum, whatever, they're on their phone so much. Sometimes you'll have people in your family who bombard you with videos and videos and videos and videos and videos and videos. And you're like, cunt, what are you doing with your day? Why are you sending me 45,000 videos all day long you have a phone addiction, and this is a boomer problem. Like, I've had people write in saying, like, I come over, it's a family gathering, and so many of the people in the older generation on their phone more so than the younger. This comes down to connection. The reason I isolate men from this more than women is that women in general, as they age, are much better at maintaining social connections than men. Men often, not always, but very often, will rely on the wife as they get older for social connection once they've retired from their job, because they don't get that social connection at work anymore. They're less likely to put in the social effort. So you are more likely to see this in men, but women definitely do this a lot, okay? So that's a problem. And I'm not saying that you guys are boomers, but it's something to pay attention and look out for. Losing track of time is another key component. So I'm just going to sit down on my phone for 10 minutes, and then before you know, it's been an hour, okay? Excessive, and then the last one is excessive use of the device. So what is excessive? So I was looking up what experts, as in psychologists and psychiatrists around like behavioral addictions, deem to be excessive. And they said anything over 20 hours a week is excessive. So if you just did 20 hours a week, which they still deem to be like acceptable, right? That is still just under 3 hours a day. And that's a lot of fucking time to be on your phone, on your social media, okay? That accounts for around 10% of your time. So that means that in 10 years, one fucking year, you've spent on your phone, a year. And that's not even excessive, according to the experts. That's not excessive. So the people that are like, oh, fuck, well, I kind of do double than that. Well, then that's 2 fucking years out of 10. And then we wonder why we never got the degree done. We wonder. 3 hours a day is insane when then people complain about not having time. That's insane, okay? And then you can't say, oh yeah, but I'm trying to rest. It's how I switch off. It's whatever. That's not even an excuse, because being on your phone, and there's all these studies that already have proven this, being on your phone does not allow your brain to rest. You're not resting. You're kidding yourself. What happens is that you feel even more tired after you've been on your phone. And then you say, see, I really needed to rest because I am so depleted. It's like, no, can't. It's the other way around. You're depleted, emotionally depleted, because you've just used up all these chemicals, all these like highs and lows, the visual system, the emotional system. Your brain's like when you're on your phone. That by the time you put your phone down, just because you've physically not moved, you've sat down, you've not rested. And then we say, oh, but I'm just so tired. Yes, of course you're tired, because you have a behavioral addiction. That's why you're tired. Anyway, so I think we need to really, anything over that, like just under that 3 hour mark a day, if you're spending more than that, you have a behavioral addiction, whether you like it or not, okay? And if you're here thinking, well, that's everyone, that's just everyone. So most people do that. Most people spend more than 3 hours. You know, it's too bad. It's still an addiction. Just because it's common, it doesn't mean it's not a problem, okay? It's still going to reduce the quality of your life. Just because everyone around you is doing it, it doesn't mean that you now have to kind of subject yourself to a lesser version of your life to do what everyone else is doing. So what are we going to do about it? There's some very, very simple things we're going to do about it. And the difficult thing about behavioral addictions is a lot of behavioral addictions are unlike chemical addictions, where it's not an all or nothing approach. You know, if you've got a food addiction, if you have a phone addiction, if you've got addictions, they're still a part of your everyday life. So it's like, how do I limit without being like, I'm going cold turkey, I'm going sober, I'm never using that thing again? Because we ideally want to be able to still use it in our life and find that balance. That's the aim. So number one, you're going to remove all your notifications. You are going to remove all your notifications today. You don't need a ding, someone liked your photo, ding, someone sent you a message. Ding. You check that fucking app with or without the notifications. I'm telling you right now, you don't need the notifications. You don't need the notifications on your emails. I don't care who you think you are. I don't care if you're the CEO of Apple. You do not need notifications. We check our phone that often that we are fooling us, that we are treating ourselves like toddlers if we say we need notifications. The only thing you want a notification on is a phone call and a text message. That's it. You don't even want that little icon. You're going to go into your settings and remove even the icon on top of your Instagram and your TikTok of your WhatsApp and all of that. That's gone. From today, never again. Because you will check it often enough. You don't need that shit to be in your awareness. Like, oh, there's more information. We don't need that. So that's gone. As of today, it's gone. The next thing is top and tail of the day is a social media free zone, whether you make it an hour, whether you make it whatever. So if you're someone that's like, oh my God, but I cannot fall asleep in total silence. I need to be scrolling. Scrolling is actually going to make it harder for you to fall asleep. So you can have your little nighttime scroll, but then when it's an hour before you're likely to go to bed, put on an audiobook, put on a podcast, put on whatever the fuck, but something where you are not interacting with social media and your phone is away without the light on, okay? Same for the first hour of the day. Ideally 2 hours, but let's just call it 1 hour. Top and tail of the day, that's what we're doing. Then another thing that I highly recommend that you do is a few days of a detox. Now, I need to be very careful when I talk about a social media detox because I don't think that detoxes are really that effective if you're just like, oh, I'm going to go 7 days off social media, but not really document it, not learn, not be retrospective about it, and then just start using it again. You've really achieved nothing, okay? So detoxes, there's good and bad. The reason why I recommend a detox in this scenario is because I want you to document this detox. 3 days, 5 days, whatever, you choose the time frame, but at minimum 3 days. What this will help you do is it will help you identify the key moments in your day where you crave it the most. Okay, being like, oh, I noticed that when I did this detox in the mornings, I was just relentlessly like, I miss my phone. I want to check my phone. Or I noticed that when I try and do a longer task, like sit down and study or work, I just needed those little breaks every 5 minutes to check. And that's when it was the hardest. I know. So it allows you to identify, it allows you to kind of crack open this behavioral compulsion of yours and see where the key moments of weakness normally lie. That's the purpose of the detox, because after the detox, if you go back to your normal behavior, you've achieved nothing. What I want this detox to do is to give you a real slap in the face insight into how compulsive you actually are and what are the key moments where you're most likely to use, quote unquote, okay? I want you to remember that, another thing that I want you to think about is the last thing as far as the things that you're going to do. So remove all notifications, top and tail of the day, do a detox so you can really understand your own behaviors. And then the last thing is you need to start really building out your version of a rat park. Okay, what is your rat park going to be? Because if you are fully entertained with something that's enriching, if you are fully like, when you do a hobby or when you do something that's like, whatever it is, for me, it's like when I do puzzles with my cousin. The last thing I want to do is to check my phone. That is the last thing I want to do. And if someone held it in front of me saying, hey, you just got a notification, I'd be like, please move that away. I'm so in the zone with this fucking puzzle. Or when I used to do sewing, I was so into sewing, like nothing could pull me out of it. I was so enthralled in it. Or when you're playing games with your friends, or when you're going out for a nice dinner with your best friend, the last thing you want to be doing, those times where you're just having such a good time, but you're thinking, oh, I'm on holidays, I really should post about these holidays. But you're like, oh, the last thing I want to do is post because I'm so in the moment of having such a good time. That's your rat park. That is your rat park. You're like, I could take it or leave it. That's the sweet spot. I'm having such a good time. I'm so fulfilled right now. My connections are so good. I'm so entertained. This hobby is so fun. That the social media is there, but I could use it. And I'm going to just update. I'll put some photos up so people can see how I'm going on my holidays. It's fun. But it's kind of like almost a chore at this point because I'm so enjoying my life right now. Okay? So those moments, think about those moments where you are less inclined to be on your phone and even less inclined to be like mindlessly scrolling because you want to get back to the real action, and that's like where life is actually happening. You've got the option of being pacified by your phone or engaging in the real life stuff that's really, really enriching for you. Okay, so we can all think of moments like that where you are so engaged in a good activity or a good conversation or a good connection that the last thing on your mind is this kind of like compulsion to check your phone. That is your rat park. So how are you going to build up the rat park? Because when the void is there, the addiction is ready to pull you back in. Not always, not forever. This is a conditioning. We've all conditioned ourselves to be this way. Do it long enough, and then when the void is there, you're likely to look for other things. And I'm not saying you've got to fill every space in your life, but I'm saying that you've got to try and make as many moments of your life as meaningful as possible. So then even when you are quote unquote bored or have not much to do, then you can, like the rats, kind of use social media as like a take it or leave it kind of thing. Yeah, I will dabble. I will scroll for a little bit. I'm going to watch these videos, post a few things, and then I'm off it. That's the point, okay? The point is that there's still going to be moments where you're going to use it, but everything else is so enriching. You've got better things that you want to be doing. You're putting more emphasis on, like, next time someone, like for example, if I have a phone call with a friend, I know for sure if they're scrolling on social media when I'm on the phone, you know who you are. You're listening to this episode right now. I can guarantee you, one of my good friends, I love her so much. Versus someone who's actually engaging in conversation. Like they're like, trying to get back to me, like answer my question, or not even answer my question. They're telling me a story and they lose track of their own fucking story. It's like, dude, you're talking about your favorite topic, yourself. That for all of us, our favorite topic is ourselves. And you even lose track on that. You're on your fucking phone, cunt, when you're talking to me. Like, focus. And I'm like, focus. And they're like, oh, sorry. It's like, if I'm going to have a phone call with my friend, am I going to half-ass it? Or am I going to have a fucking conversation with my friend and put my phone down, put it on speaker, put it down, and just talk? We always are trying to multitask 24/7. Try not multitasking. Try doing a single task and see how fulfilling it feels to do it properly, okay? It's quite basic, but that's where you find fulfillment. If you're always pacifying, then you got one foot in the door, one foot out of the door, nothing's going to be fulfilling, nothing's going to be entertaining, okay? So you are conditioned. This is a condition that can be changed. You can uncondition yourself from something. That's the beauty of the brain and how plastic it can be. And I want you to realize that behavioral addictions are nowhere near as intense as, from a neurological perspective, as a chemical addiction. So here we're talking about a behavioral addiction that is a lot easier to curb than a chemical addiction as far as what you see going on in the brain on a chemical level. So this is a good thing. We're working with something that's, easier to curb than if we're talking about a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction. So the whole aim of today is to create your own rat park. I want you to write into me and tell me how you've created your own rat park or how you plan on creating your own rat park. I want you to, tag me in it. Lol, we're talking about social media, not using it. You're going to do intentional social media use. You're going to write something about how you created your own rat park or do a little reel and tag me in it. I want to see what your version of a rat park is and how you're filling up your day with meaningful connections and kind of like your haven of feeling satisfied. And then also I want you to ask yourself, when it comes to connection, you've got to ask yourself, what does real connection look like? Okay. It's not where people are always looking out for you or looking after you, but it is a mutual beneficial relationship where both people kind of earn their place in each other's life, okay? Complacency doesn't have space in this, right? So this is the whole premise behind this male loneliness epidemic. They are upset because... And again, not all men, obviously it's not all men, but there's a population of men that are upset because women now are like, again, take it or leave it. I actually don't need to be in this, so I'm not interested. And so they leave it. And then there's all these lonely men, but the men are basically like a product of their own creation, of what they created. And the women are saying, no, I'll opt out, thank you very much. And then they're like, well, now I'm lonely. Now I've got all these problems. Now I'm lonely. This is not a reciprocal thing. Complacency does not have a place here. If you are lonely, how are you going to make someone else's life fulfilling? If you are lonely, what are you doing to actually bring value into someone else's life? Not saying I'm the victim, everything's happening to me, okay? Most of those relationships with the male loneliness epidemic has come because of it was one-sided, the relationship was not earned, it was taken for granted, and then others got sick of it and kind of walked away. They're like, this isn't a connection. This is me servicing your needs, servicing. I'm not getting anything back, I'm out. And then they're like, whoa, now I'm lonely. You've made me lonely. So it's like so use that as an example for your life. If you're ever feeling like I don't have connection, are you playing the victim? Or are you really trying to see where can it be reciprocal? Where can I actually create real meaningful connections. And it might not be with the friendships you have. You might have outgrown the friendships. You might just not feel connected. You might have to look elsewhere. You might have to like really stretch and step outside. There are many people within my community that have met before a live show or have met like on their own little meetups and created friendships with people that they thought that they would connect with better because they weren't finding that connection with their high school friends or with their work friends, that they're just not finding that deep connection. So sometimes it does take you stepping well outside of your comfort zone and being like, hey, does someone want to meet up? Or hey, or I'll go to that person's meetup or whatever, and just putting it out there and trying. Also, another thing that you've got to remember is when you see people that are really, really connected, that's longevity in a relationship. It doesn't happen overnight. So sometimes you'll be like, I met this, as long as you align on not like morally on like all the deeper things and humor, it won't necessarily happen overnight. So it is like a work in progress, and things that are earned are the ones that feel the best. So put in the effort with these relationships, earn trust, earn that connection, and then slowly but surely you will build out a really beautiful, strong friendship over time. Okay? So basically, what I want you to ask yourself is, how am I going to build out my rat park? And once I've figured out how I'm going to build out my rat park, I'm going to tell Alexis either via voice note, email, social media. I will tell her. Guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Hopefully it empowered you to create your own rat park. We love rats so much. I love rats. Ratatouille is one of my favorite films. Just iconic. And also I have like a stuffed toy rat from IKEA. My cousin has like a twin rat. They're matching rats. Anyway, so I just think they're really cute. So rat park is the theme of the week. Love you guys so much. That is all for today. As always, remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to your brain. Don't take shit from anyone, and especially don't take shit from yourself. Danke!